Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we will talk about the problem. Kai had always been a man of control, at least outwardly. His calm demeanor, his athleticism, and his disciplined approach to life made him someone people could rely on. But as time passed, a deep and troubling shift began to occur. The events surrounding Drew and the dark secrets he was becoming increasingly entangled in started to change him in ways he couldn't control. What was once a quiet struggle with guilt and fear slowly morphed into something far darker. An obsession with the truth that seemed to overpower every other thought in his mind. At the center of this growing darkness was his undeniable realization Drew had manipulated him. The more Kai reflected on their past together, the more he saw how Drew had used him for his own purposes. Their friendship, which had once seemed genuine, now felt like an elaborate scheme, a trap. Drew, for all his charm and intelligence, was not the man Kai thought he was. This realization didn't come quickly, and it certainly didn't come without pain. The truth was slow, creeping up on him, revealing layer after layer of deceit and manipulation. What had started as an innocent friendship had morphed into a complicated web of lies and moral compromises, and Kai had been caught right in the middle of it. As the weight of this truth bore down on him, Kai couldn't escape the growing anger and resentment that began to fester. Drew had crossed a line that couldn't be undone, and for Kai, that line was the point of no return. The anger was consuming, and it pushed him into dangerous territory. Every thought, every moment, every interaction with Drew became tainted with this bitter desire for revenge. Kai couldn't let it go. The more he thought about what Drew had done, not just to him but to everyone around him, the more desperate he became to make him pay. But what did that mean for Kai? What would it mean for him to expose Drew's secrets to the world? Could he really bring himself to destroy someone he had once considered a friend, even if that friend had betrayed him in ways he never could have imagined? The decision was eating away at him. But the more he tried to ignore it, the more it became clear that there was no escape. Drew had to be stopped. The weight of his betrayal was too much to bear, and Kai couldn't let it slide. Kai knew that the only way to make things right, or at least to relieve the growing pressure in his chest, was to tell the truth. He needed to expose Drew for what he truly was. The lies had gone on long enough. But as the truth started to form in Kai's mind, something else started to nag at him. He wasn't alone in this. Curtis had also been drawn into the web of deception, and now Kai felt a deep need to tell him everything he knew. Curtis, a man of integrity, had been looking for answers about Drew for a long time. Kai had seen the curiosity in his eyes, the suspicion that Drew had more secrets than he was willing to admit. Curtis had trusted Drew, and that trust had been shattered. But Curtis also trusted Kai, and Kai knew that revealing the truth to him was the only way to ensure that the story was heard by someone who would understand the gravity of what was at stake. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about setting things right. But telling Curtis would be no small task. Kai could already feel the weight of the confession. The fear that revealing the truth would lead to even more damage. Not just for Drew but for everyone involved. There was no turning back once the truth came out. But could Kai live with himself if he didn't speak up? Could he live with the knowledge that Drew was still out there, manipulating everyone around him without anyone knowing the full truth? The decision seemed clear, but the emotional toll was far greater than Kai had ever expected. When he finally told Curtis, the impact was immediate. Curtis, who had always been a man of action and integrity, was taken aback by the weight of the revelation. At first, there was shock. Curtis had always considered Drew a friend, a man who had earned his trust and respect. To hear that Drew had been involved in such a web of deception and manipulation felt like a betrayal of his own judgment. Curtis, like Kai, had been misled by Drew's charm and his smooth demeanor. But as the layers of deception were peeled back, the anger in Curtis grew. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The betrayal wasn't just a personal affront to Kai. It was an affront to everything Curtis had worked for, everything he had trusted in. But as Curtis listened to Kai's confession, something else began to shift in him. The anger was there, yes, but there was also something deeper, a need for justice. Curtis, a man who had always fought for what was right, was now faced with a moral dilemma. He had always believed in doing things the right way, in going through the proper channels. But with Drew, there was no right way. Drew had used every tactic at his disposal to manipulate and control those around him. And now Curtis knew that he couldn't just sit back and let it continue. The temptation for revenge, for making Drew pay for his actions, was strong. Curtis could feel it building inside him, the same frustration and anger that Kai had experienced. Drew had to be stopped. But the question now was, how? Curtis was a man of principle. He had always believed in justice. But the truth about Drew left him questioning what that even meant anymore. What was the right thing to do when everything about Drew's actions had been so wrong? The desire for revenge, for making Drew pay for the lies and manipulations, was powerful. But Curtis knew that if he gave into that desire, he would be no better than Drew. The line between justice and vengeance was thin, and Curtis didn't want to cross it. Still, the temptation to take matters into his own hands was there. He wanted to make Drew suffer. He wanted Drew to feel the pain of his betrayal just as Kai had. But Curtis knew that, ultimately, the truth had to come out. Drew needed to be exposed for who he truly was. And it was up to both him and Kai to make that happen. The stakes were high and the fallout was inevitable. But in the end, Curtis knew that he couldn't let Drew continue to hurt those he loved. He had to be stopped, even if it meant breaking his own moral code. The decision to expose Drew was one that would change everything. Curtis and Kai were now bound together in their pursuit of justice, even though both men had very different ideas of what that meant. For Kai, this was about revenge, about making Drew pay for the manipulation he had suffered. For Curtis, it was about doing what was right, even if it meant risking everything. The line between justice and revenge had blurred, and now both men were faced with the consequences of their choices. As they moved forward with their plan to expose Drew, neither of them could know just how far-reaching the consequences would be. They were about to uncover a truth so dark that it would change everything in Port Charles. But the question remained, would the truth bring the justice they sought? Or would it lead them down a darker, more dangerous path than they had ever anticipated? Kai's journey, once about redemption, had become a quest for revenge. And Curtis's moral compass was now swinging wildly between justice and vengeance. Together, they would navigate this treacherous path, but the cost of their actions would be steep. Whether they would emerge victorious or be consumed by the very darkness they sought to expose was yet to be seen. But one thing was certain, Drew's manipulation was about to be exposed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The news that Jens Austin Astrup, the actor behind Kai Taylor, is soon to leave General Hospital as his contract comes to an end, has sent ripples through the soap opera world. This development marks not just the end of a character arc but also signals a larger shift in the direction of the show. Kai, once a character caught in the middle of moral conflicts, has slowly spiraled into a darker, more obsessive role. His descent, once portrayed as a subtle battle with guilt, has now evolved into an all-consuming obsession that's beginning to affect everyone around him, especially those he holds closest. As Astrup prepares to exit the show, the question becomes, what legacy will Kai leave behind? And how will his departure influence the ongoing war between Curtis and Drew? For months, Kai has been at the center of a moral quandary. The truth about Drew's manipulations and schemes has slowly unraveled, forcing Kai into a position where his once clear boundaries are now clouded by rage and a desire for revenge. Drew, once a friend and mentor to Kai, has become the symbol of everything that is wrong in Kai's life. The more Kai learns about Drew's involvement in shady dealings, the more consumed by bitterness and anger he becomes. What started as a subtle suspicion has grown into a full-blown obsession, and Kai's focus on exposing Drew has pushed him into increasingly dangerous territory. The relationship between Kai and Drew, once built on trust, has deteriorated into a bitter, poisonous rivalry. Drew, who had always used his charm and authority to control those around him, has now become a shadow in Kai's life, a figure who represents all of Kai's broken ideals. Drew's increasingly erratic behavior, combined with his willingness to use anyone for his own gain, has pushed Kai over the edge. The once innocent man who was merely seeking redemption is now a person hell-bent on revenge. Kai's obsession with exposing Drew for the manipulations he's committed has become all-consuming, leading him to make choices that will inevitably alter the course of his future. But Kai's journey isn't just about him. His actions have far-reaching consequences, especially for Trina. The more Kai becomes consumed by his need for revenge, the more Trina finds herself entangled in a web she didn't ask to be a part of. Her relationship with Kai, once a source of support, is now filled with tension and confusion. Trina, who had once been focused on building a life free from the chaos around her, is now caught in the aftermath of Kai's decisions. As she witnesses his descent into obsession, Trina begins to feel the weight of the consequences. She is increasingly haunted by the choices that Kai has made, unsure of how to navigate the relationship without being dragged down with him. What makes Trina's situation even more complicated is her growing fear that her own involvement in this darkening narrative will be her undoing. As Kai becomes more fixated on exposing Drew and his wrongdoings, Trina finds herself increasingly caught in the crossfire. The secrets that they share, particularly the blackmail evidence they've stolen, have the potential to destroy not only Drew but also those they care about. Trina, who once sought justice and truth, is now questioning whether the cost of that truth is too high. The haunting thought that her family might be dragged into this mess weighs heavily on her, and she begins to question whether it's too late to extricate herself from the chaos that Kai's obsession has caused. As Curtis becomes more involved in the fight against Drew, the stakes continue to rise. Curtis, whose world was once defined by his sense of justice and loyalty, is now finding himself at a crossroads. The more he learns about Drew's manipulations and the web of deceit Drew has spun, the more Curtis feels the need to act. His rage at being deceived by someone he once trusted is becoming all-consuming. Curtis's moral compass, once unwavering, is now clouded by anger and the need for retribution. Drew's increasingly erratic behavior, his willingness to do anything to maintain his power, has made it clear to Curtis that something must be done. But the question remains, is Curtis' desire for revenge justified? Or is he being pulled into a cycle of vengeance that will leave him morally compromised? The conflict between Curtis and Drew is escalating. And as Kai continues to dig deeper into Drew's secrets, it becomes clear that the battle is no longer just about Drew's manipulation of others. It's about the emotional toll this battle is taking on everyone involved. Curtis, once a man of clear moral values, is now facing the possibility that revenge might consume him, just as it has consumed Kai. The lines between justice and vengeance are becoming increasingly blurred, and it's uncertain who will emerge victorious or whether anyone will emerge unscathed. For Kai, the battle for revenge is not just about exposing Drew's lies. It's about reclaiming control over his life. The choices he makes in the coming weeks will define the man he becomes, a man who could either find redemption or spiral further into darkness. His obsession with Drew is already beginning to take a toll on his mental and emotional health, and it's unclear how much longer he can maintain his tenuous grip on his sanity. But one thing is clear, Kai's actions will have lasting consequences, and those consequences will be felt by everyone in his life, especially Trina. The emotional stakes are high for Trina, who is caught in the fallout of Kai's obsession. She's increasingly unsure of where she stands with him, as his actions continue to push her further away from the life she's been trying to build. The love and loyalty she feels for Kai are being tested, and the emotional toll it's taking on her is becoming evident. As Kai's obsession with exposing Drew grows, Trina finds herself facing an impossible choice: remain by his side and risk losing everything, or walk away from him to protect herself and her future. The question remains, can Kai's obsession with revenge be stopped before it consumes him entirely? Or will it push everyone he cares about into a deeper emotional abyss? And will Curtis' desire for justice turn him into the very thing he despises, a man driven by anger and vengeance? As the battle between Kai, Curtis, and Drew continues to unfold, the lines between right and wrong become increasingly unclear, and the stakes become higher than ever before. The consequences of their actions will have lasting effects, and no one, not even Kai or Curtis, will emerge from this conflict unscathed. The return of Spencer to Port Charles has sent ripples through the town, setting off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. The once reluctant heir to the Casadini family legacy has returned with a mission, one that promises to shake things up in ways that are both unpredictable and dangerous. Spencer's return isn't just about family dynamics or rekindling old relationships. It's about laying the groundwork for a future that could change the balance of power in Port Charles. As he re-enters the scene, new evidence and revelations about his plans begin to surface, leaving everyone around him on edge and uncertain about what he really wants. Spencer's intentions are unclear, but the consequences of his actions are already being felt. The first clue that Spencer's return isn't just a casual visit comes when Kai unexpectedly leaves Port Charles. Kai, who had been entangled in the web of secrets and manipulations involving Drew, Curtis, and others, has been a key player in the drama that has unfolded. His departure, however, opens up a gaping hole in the storyline, creating a void that needs to be filled. It's not just Kai's exit that raises questions. It's what his absence means for the ongoing conflicts in Port Charles. His departure marks the beginning of a new chapter, one that introduces new threats and challenges for the characters who have relied on him for information, guidance, and even for protection. With Kai gone, the vacuum left behind starts to have profound effects on those still in Port Charles, especially as the stakes continue to rise. Trina, who had relied on Kai's presence in her life, now faces uncertainty. Her relationships with others, particularly Curtis, become more complicated as they try to navigate the growing tension in the town without the anchor that Kai had represented. Kai's exit leaves a sense of instability, making everyone question who can be trusted and what alliances are still solid. The void he leaves behind isn't just emotional, it's a critical one, as his role in exposing Drew's past and protecting those around him is now gone. But as Kai leaves, Spencer's return suddenly becomes even more significant. His arrival is no coincidence. He knows that the town is in turmoil, and he knows that his family's name, the Casadini legacy, holds the power to turn the tide in his favor. Spencer isn't just coming back to settle old scores or to deal with family matters. He is positioning himself for something far greater, something that will shift the balance of power in Port Charles, in ways that no one is fully prepared for. The new evidence that starts to surface regarding Spencer's return only deepens the mystery. Whispers about Spencer's intentions begin to swirl, and suspicions grow as his actions seem to hint at a larger, more dangerous plot. The way he has re-entered the scene with calculated precision suggests that he has been planning this return for some time. His connections, once seen as tenuous, are now coming into sharper focus. As Spencer makes moves that reveal his true aims, it becomes clear that he is not just playing a game of family politics. He is actively reshaping the landscape of Port Charles, pulling strings behind the scenes to get what he wants. At the same time, the town is reeling from the absence of Kai. His departure has left many unanswered questions, and the void left behind is now forcing characters to confront the unresolved issues he had been involved in. Without him, the fight against Drew and his manipulations takes on a new form. The investigation into Drew's past has reached a critical point. But without the crucial evidence that Kai held, everyone is scrambling to piece things together. The uncertainty of Kai's exit leaves the town exposed to new threats, as the puzzle that had once seemed solvable becomes increasingly complex. Kai's departure also marks a new obsession for many of the characters involved. As they try to move forward without him, the question arises, what role will his absence play in the future of Port Charles? Without his insight and his unique position within the drama, those left behind must now grapple with the consequences of his exit. The fight to expose Drew, the struggle to hold onto family secrets, and the quest for control over the town's power dynamics all take on new urgency. For Spencer, the path ahead is clear. He plans to take advantage of the gaps left by Kai's exit, using the uncertainty and chaos to his benefit. His intentions are shrouded in mystery, but one thing is certain. Spencer has no intention of letting anyone, including Curtis or Trina, stand in his way. As he plots his next moves, Spencer becomes more determined to reclaim what he believes is rightfully his. The Casa Dini name holds power, and Spencer intends to wield it in ways that will change the future of Port Charles. For Curtis, the absence of Kai brings its own set of complications. His pursuit of justice, particularly with Drew, now feels like a much harder battle. With Kai no longer in the picture, Curtis must find new ways to expose Drew's dark past and stop him from manipulating those around him. But without Kai's key information, Curtis's path becomes more treacherous. He is forced to confront the reality that he may have underestimated the depth of Drew's influence, and now he must navigate the dangerous waters alone, all while grappling with his own anger and sense of betrayal. As Trina becomes more aware of the growing tension between the men in her life, she realizes that her role in this unfolding drama is becoming more complicated. She is caught between the pull of her love and loyalty to Kai, and her growing distrust of the motives of those around her. As Spencer's return looms large, Trina finds herself increasingly haunted by the secrets she has kept, the blackmail evidence, her role in the scheme to bring down Drew, and her desire to protect those she loves. Spencer's rival only intensifies the pressure, as his actions force Trina to reckon with the choices she has made and the dangerous path she now finds herself on. The new obsessions that are starting to form in the hearts and minds of these characters are undeniably dangerous. Spencer's calculated re-entry into the town, his newfound power, and his mysterious agenda are just the beginning. As more secrets are uncovered and more alliances shift, the stakes are rising. The war between Drew and Curtis, once a personal vendetta, is becoming a fight for control of Port Charles itself. Kai's absence leaves a gap that will only widen, and the emotional and moral battles being fought are becoming increasingly complex. The new direction that the storyline is taking is both thrilling and terrifying. Spencer's return is a game changer, but the question remains, what will he do with the power he's been handed? Will he manipulate the situation for his own gain? Or will he try to redeem himself and make amends for the mistakes of his past? The consequences of his actions are still unclear, but it's certain that his return is a pivotal moment in the show, one that will have lasting effects on all the characters involved. As Port Charles braces itself for the changes ahead, the residents of this tumultuous town must navigate a future where loyalty, revenge, and power are in constant flux. The gaps left by Kai and the new revelations about Spencer's ambitions are making the future more uncertain than ever, and no one is safe from the fallout that is sure to come. The next chapter in this saga will be one filled with even more twists and turns, and only time will tell who will emerge victorious and who will be consumed by the ever-deepening chaos.